NAMI Cobb is an affiliate of NAMI Georgia, which is the state organization for NAMI, the National Alliance on Mental Illness. NAMI Cobb is entirely volunteer-run organization, and I would like to thank the many volunteers, and especially our speaker tonight, for all they do. NAMI Cobb seeks to create a community where all affected by mental illness find hope, help, and acceptance through support, education, and advocacy. May is Mental Health Awareness Month, Global Maternal Mental Health Month, and Mother's Day. Our speaker this month, who I will introduce shortly, is an expert in all of these areas. May is also the first month that NAMI Cobb is conducting a virtual monthly educational meeting. NAMI Cobb's prior virtual experience includes a family-to-family class that finished up virtually, and our 2 weekly support groups, which started on the Zoom virtual platform last month. If you go to our website, namicobb.org, the second listing on the left side navigation column is NAMI Cobb Virtual Support Groups. Click on it and it will show you the times and contacts for joining our 2 weekly support groups. One group, Connections, is for those with a mental health condition, and the other, Family Support, is for their family and friends. Please visit our website, NAMI Cobb, that's NAMICOBB.org, for additional information. I direct you to our website for information on the support groups because we have formalized the sign-in procedures for security and confidentiality. The coronavirus, COVID-19, remains the topic of the day, and information available on the subject is at nami.org, and it includes a 21-page COVID-19 informational resource guide. That's at the national website, nami.org. The NAMI Georgia website, namiga.org, contains information on weekly educational webinars. They are on Thursdays from 12 to 1. Now, for today's speaker, I am pleased to welcome Tiffany Connors, who will speak on mental health and motherhood. Tiffany is a Georgia and South Carolina licensed psychotherapist. She is also a bilingual clinical social worker and the owner of Maternal Insync LLC, a counseling agency for women and families. Tiffany is a lecturer in the Wellstar College of Social Work and Human Services at Kennesaw State University. She earned both a Bachelor of Arts degree in Spanish and a master's degree in social work from the University of South Carolina, Columbia. I am privileged to know Tiffany through her volunteer work on the leadership team of NAMI Cobb, and I look forward to her presentation. Tiffany?
Hey, everybody. Thanks so much, Peter, for the warm introduction. I really appreciate you and your leadership. Like Peter mentioned, I am a member of NAMI Cobb and also part of the leadership team, and I count it a joy to participate with so many passionate people who are taking care of a loved one or themselves are thriving with mental illness. And it's a beautiful thing to see the work that can be done when we all come together. And I especially want to thank you, Peter, for being so open to the idea of us doing something like this, from our virtual support groups to also doing this educational meeting. So thank you so much for letting me be the first one to kick off the webinar. So thank you so much again. So May is Maternal Mental Health Month. Did you know that was a thing? Like, it really is a thing. And I am honored to be able to talk to you about it because mommies are my jam. So I'm sharing my screen so you can see the presentation. It's just a couple of slides. Listen, I'm a lecturer, so I know how to fill at least 3 hours worth of content weekly, but I'm not going to do that to you tonight. Thank you so much for joining and spending a portion of your Thursday night. You could be doing anything, but you chose to join us and hear some information about how to support the moms in your life. So we're going to talk about maternal health, mental health, symptoms, and resources to help new and new again mamas. Those are mamas that have had several babies, new again. Because things happen, things are different. Each pregnancy brings on various joys and complications. So that's what this presentation is all about. So if I can get my computer to work, there it is. All right, so you should be able to leave this time together, at least identifying what a perinatal mood and anxiety disorder is and some of the differences. Be familiar with perinatal emotional complications amongst women, and then also understand ways to support a mom in your life. I know we're all connected to somebody who is mothering or has mothered. And so this is a really good way for us to be supportive. A little bit about me. Peter did a great job reading the bio I sent. Great job, Peter. I have experience working with families, groups, and individuals as a licensed clinical social worker. I've done it through case management, clinical, crisis intervention. Go Gamecocks. I did graduate from the University of South Carolina, and mommies are my jam. I don't know if you understand what that means. Like you hear a song on the radio, like, ooh, that's my jam. That's how I feel about mamas. Like I am in love with the idea of what that role means and how impactful it is on not just your life, but your children's life. I mean, we all can think about our own mother, whether they were involved in our lives or not, and that impacted you. You know what I'm saying? So anyway, Mama's on my jam. So I'm honored to be able to talk to you about this. I also love eating tacos. So if you are having like a taco night and you want to virtually invite me, I am all the way down. I appreciate it. And I love James Brown, and I know all of his songs, and we can also do a karaoke night. So I'm really looking for friends. That's why I'm doing this. I'm playing. I get to mother these three. So I have a 7-year-old, a soon-to-be 5-year-old going on 15. Lord, pray for me. And I also have a baby boy who's in heaven now. In February 2020, we delivered our beautiful son, and he was such a blessing. He was diagnosed with a condition that affected how his organs grew, and we really didn't know how to help him until he was born. We knew few babies survived with his condition, but we were praying and hoping that he would be one of the few. We were blessed to have him for a few hours, and he has made such an impact on our lives. And I mention him partly because he's part of my story as a mom, but most of all because mothering him for those few hours didn't start there after delivery. Mothering him started when we conceived. You know, having to provide a safe place for him to thrive while we were waiting for him to be born. Mothering doesn't just start after delivery. So we have to keep that in mind, that as women who are trying to conceive, family who are hoping to bring in another member in their family through surrogacy or any of those other ways that we can, adoption, all those different ways that we can bring family together. Mothering just doesn't start after you deliver. So just keep that in mind as we continue to go through these slides together. I told you mommy's on my jam, but why does maternal mental health matter? The mental health of a mom matters because, let's face it, we love dads, and you get your month next month, okay? This is all about mamas this month. Mothers are the heart of the family. We also care about maternal mental health because transgenerational trauma affects the way we parent. What that looks like is the way my mother was mothered affects how I mother. The good, the bad, the ugly, the default. And so understanding that if a grandmother dealt with trauma, most likely her child and their children may experience that trauma. So transgenerational trauma definitely affects how we parent. Of course, families thrive all together with the healthy mom, And mothers having a healthy attachment to their children are less likely to neglect them. They're going to be more protective of them. They're going to intervene and be more of an advocate and socially support them, as well as keep other challenges and issues from their children. It leads to less DFACS involvement. So here in the state of Georgia, the Department of Family and Children's Services is the one that you will call when you need to file a child protective service report. We have seen that when moms have a healthy attachment, a more secure attachment, they are less likely to have the state involvement in their parenting. So I mention that because the term perinatal is important because it includes moms from conception to a year after delivery. And the diagnostic manual, or what we use, psychologists, social workers, therapists, we use this to diagnose people whenever we have to. And they came up with this new term called perinatal mood and anxiety disorders. We're going to talk about mental health. We have to talk about mood, and we have to talk about anxiety. And these are some of the things that show up sometimes for moms. So like I mentioned, perinatal refers to the period of pregnancy and the first year after a baby is born. So once you find out you're pregnant, up to a year after the baby is born, we actually call that perinatal. That term doctors also use as well. Research shows that perinatal mood and anxiety disorders, or PMADs, can appear days or even months after childbirth. These are specific diagnoses that show up at the onset of pregnancy and a year after a child is born. That doesn't mean that mom was having these symptoms before pregnancy. She was diagnosed with bipolar disorder before even, her reproductive years. This is important to know, that pregnancy and the onset of pregnancy can change your mood and change your response to various stressors that can cause anxiety, and it can be diagnosed. So we actually have coined that as a psychological and social work term that we use. You've probably heard postpartum depression, and that used to be like the end all be all of mood and anxiety disorders. You're like, oh yeah, she's got postpartum. She's got postpartum. Postpartum just means I just had a baby. So we can't say postpartum because everybody got postpartum, or all moms would have it. Postpartum depression is one diagnosis of the various perinatal mood and anxiety disorders. It's too narrow of a definition to just say PPD. It doesn't include all the things that can happen prior to conceive, during, after conceivement, and again after delivery. But since we mentioned postpartum depression, let's talk about it or review it. Maybe you've heard of this before, so you're like, oh, I know. Listen, somebody in your life may not know, and you may be able to give them the correct terms. We have symptoms differ for everyone, but most of the time it includes feeling angry, fear or guilt, a lack of interest in your baby, an appetite disturbance, whether you're eating more or eating less, difficulty concentrating, making decisions, and possible thoughts of harming themselves or the baby. That doesn't mean that mom will, but they may have possible thoughts. Normally, if it's a thought and they're afraid of the thought, then it's postpartum depression. If they're not afraid of the thought and they don't see that it's wrong to feel remorseful or guilt about having the thought, then it's something else that we'll get to shortly. Of course, postpartum depression leads to increased costs of medical care, inappropriate medical care, child abuse, neglect, discontinuation of breastfeeding, family dysfunction, and of course, adverse effects on early brain development of that infant. Approximately 15% of women experience some type of depression following childbirth. 15%. So that's a lot of women, a lot of moms that are facing postpartum depression. It can be treated. Symptoms can be completely eliminated and it be something that they don't deal with later. So just know that if you know someone or you yourself are experiencing some of these symptoms, definitely get the support you need, and you can do that via telemedicine. We'll talk about that a little bit more. You probably heard of baby blues. 80% of moms experience baby blues. That's a lot. Like literally 8 out of 10 moms have experienced this crying, weepiness at least 2 weeks between the first 2 weeks of delivery. So kind of keeping that in mind, like if you saw a new mom, you're like, she's just really weepy. She's adjusting to a lot of variations of her hormones. She was had so many hormones during pregnancy, and then as soon as delivery, those hormone levels shot down quickly, and that leaves her brain, her body at this equilibrium. They're not balanced, and so a lot of moms may be having some of those symptoms. But if it lasts longer than 2 weeks, that's when we call it postpartum depression. So if it's from like 14 days after or more, that's when we may need to change the diagnosis from just baby blues. We gotta keep this in mind because every year more than 400,000 infants are born to moms who are depressed. But are they being treated for some type of depression while pregnant? Probably not. In most cases, probably not even being screened. If you think back, whether it was 2 months ago or maybe 20 years ago, the last time you got prenatal care, did your doctor talk to you about feeling sad, feeling moody, irritable during your pregnancy? They probably didn't. And if they did, they probably chucked it up as, that's just pregnancy hormones. You'll be just fine. So a lot of that is not just pregnancy hormones. There's a fine line, and getting the support you need can help you discover which it is. But just know that it's underdiagnosed, and that's a challenge. Now, all mamas don't face depression. They don't feel sad, irritable, or withdrawn. Some of them experience anxiety in the form of a panic disorder. This anxiety occurs in about 11% of new moms, and the symptoms really mimic what anxiety disorder or panic disorder looks like. Feelings of nervousness, recurring panic attacks, shortness of breath, sorry, my bad. Chest pain, heart palpitations, a lot of worries, a lot of fears. And just keeping that in mind that you may, again, especially if they're a new mom, this may feel normal when they hear about that new mom going through that. It's like, oh, it's just new mom stuff. Let's keep in mind that if they're experiencing physical reaction to those worries and those fears, then it might be something a little bit more. And it could be postpartum panic disorder. And of course, it could be PTSD. If you've had a traumatic childbirth experience, or something that you've been through related to your pregnancy that caused trauma, you can have a postpartum post-traumatic stress disorder, PTSD. And that's just basically the symptoms that you see similar to what many veterans, those in law enforcement, those who experience something major or traumatic. They have trauma in dreams, thoughts. They have avoidance of whatever stimuli associated with that event that causes those dreams, thoughts, and physical reaction. They may have persistent increased arousal or irritable, have difficulty sleeping, hypervigilance, that just looks like they're startled easy, and they are kind of like hyper aware of what's going on. This happens 1 to 6. So it's not as prevalent, but if they had a traumatic childbirth, which I treated in my own practice, a mom who had a birth plan and everything was going well until baby's heart stopped in the middle of delivery. And so they had an emergency delivery that was painful, not medicated, them having to push down on her belly physically, grown people pushing down to help deliver her baby. And she had nightmares. She was resentful. She had a hard time attaching to her baby after such a traumatic event. I moved on in our slides because postpartum psychosis is very rare, but when it shows up, again, for moms who had a psychotic disorder prior to pregnancy, this can happen at the onset, all of a sudden, and most often in the first 4 weeks after you deliver. But you begin to have delusions, hallucinations, feeling very irritated, hyperactive, a decreased need for sleep, and significant mood changes. We saw this in the case in Texas. And of course, her name leaves me right now. Oh my gosh. If you know her name, put it in the chat, because Andrea Gates, that's it. She, in Texas a while ago, was part of like, she ended up killing all her children. She drowned them. And I'm sorry, this is a trigger alert. She murdered her children, but she was under the impression that she was sending them to heaven so that they didn't have to deal with this horrible world. And it was part of her psychosis. The psychosis and the delusions were that she needed to get them to heaven so that they didn't have to deal with what was happening here on earth, and that the voices in her head and God was telling her that she needed to sacrifice her children and get them there. She was diagnosed with postpartum psychosis after several of her pregnancies. She was given medication, but because it wasn't a well-known disorder, because there was trust that she would take medication on her own and not through the support of a family member or loved one, her diagnosis, her psychosis got so severe to the point where she thought she was doing well. So remember when I told you back in the postpartum depression slide, if moms don't feel guilty about the thoughts of harming the baby, it's more likely something else. And it's probably something like psychosis. So if they have thoughts of harming their baby, then and they're not guilty, they don't feel guilty or like horrified, like how dare I even think of doing something like that. Normally it's something else, like a psychotic feature. So keep that in mind. Being part of a crisis team, we actually did encounter this, and we've heard of this before, where a mom who ended her life after she ended the life of her children. And she was a veteran. She was in Cobb County. It made me so sad because she was literally a phone call away from support and help. There were so many professionals that had encountered her when she tried to take her kids to the hospital to give them to the hospital. It was just a challenging story. And we actually came across a mom who just delivered. She had a C-section, and she thought her baby was a baby doll. That was part of her delusion, was that that's not a real baby. And she kept shaking the baby, that her family, they noticed it. They were like, no, 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 no. And they took the baby from her and would always watch her when she was around the baby. She didn't want to nurse the baby because she thought it was a doll. She never had a previous diagnosis of a mental health disorder. This was the first time they ever seen her act so irrational and so different from who she was. She hadn't bathed. She was still in her hospital gown. And come to find out, she got discharged from the hospital and was seen by a physician who gave her the diagnosis of postpartum psychosis. Didn't talk to the family about it. She was having psychotic features that was related to postpartum. So I spent a little bit of time here because most likely the mama is not going to notice that things aren't well. It's going to be the people in her life. It's going to be the partners. It's going to be spouses, the grandparents. It's going to be community members coming in. If you're serving that mom in some type of capacity, seeing like, you know what, something's a little different. She keeps calling her baby the devil or an angel. I mean, you know, we call babies angels sometimes, but more like it's a religious hallucination or delusion. And I have to talk about this because of the fact that I am a mental health provider, but I've also been part of the team where we did address suicidality. 1 of 3 suicides is the 1 out of 3 suicide is one of the 3 leading causes of maternal death. So kind of keeping that in mind that we want to keep our moms well. This is the extreme of things. So a lot of moms aren't facing those things. But we have to keep in mind when you approach new moms, new again moms, that all pregnancies are not wanted. All pregnancies don't result in a live baby. And not pregnancy, and another myth is that pregnancy leads to love in a relationship, or that being pregnant means that that mom is having a healthy baby. One of the challenges I face just knowing that my son, who was born this past February, was facing some health complications. It was really hard to manage my faith, my belief, my love, and questions or assumptions from people who encountered me as a pregnant person. So we have to keep that in mind, that when you never know when you're triggering somebody, and you never know when you may be saying something that may hurt them or make them feel bad, or you just got to keep them moving. But we want to be mindful of how we are treating moms, because it does affect them and the way they go through their pregnancy and their delivery. Some of the misconceptions is that mom is supposed to be super mom, and one that has been mostly seen in how we are affected by COVID-19. I really wanted to spend some time just talking about that, because to mull over that and how it's affected motherhood now would be a disservice. And so it's definitely affecting moms. And so there was a survey done by the Motherhood Lifestyle brand. It's a website. They've got a social media following, and they promote wellness of mothering throughout, from trying to conceive all the way to empty nesting. And they determined, based on a survey that they did in the US, mothers are saying that they feel mentally worse since the pandemic. And that's about 74% of those moms. And those moms that they surveyed were between the ages of 24 to 39. So we would consider those millennial moms. And those millennial moms are challenged because they're also working age moms too, whether they're pregnant during the time or the mother and having to manage being a mother, an employee, housekeeper, maker, an entrepreneur, boss, the lunch lady, the custodian, all those things at the same time. Normally you get a break, like send them to school, and then you get to come home. So the pandemic has affected mental health and emotional wellness for a lot of moms, well, for everyone, but in this case, those that are responsible for caring for multiple people, whether it's their children, their parents, and other loved ones in the home. So the pandemic is affecting us, and that's it's sad, but it also is bringing out the best of us too. what resources are available for the moms in your life? If you were, now that you know, like, okay, especially that new mom, she may be prone to postpartum depression, anxiety. I think all of us can be probably diagnosed with generalized anxiety right about now, just trying to interface with the public and going in and out, trying to stay safe and healthy and protect your family. But what kind of resources are available for those moms in your life? So it looks different for each mom. I want you to keep in mind that community is important, feeling connected. One of the things that I did, because after realizing like, oh snap, my kids aren't going back to school. Okay, we can do this. I called the troops. I was like, all mamas. I became very like oriented, like I need a community. I need my friends. So we had like a Zoom meeting before it was cool. We had a Zoom meeting and said, hey, let's have a pep rally. What do you want to do? Like, what are strategies that you're going to use for this next week? Just let's get through each week. And so each week we would meet at a certain time at night, most likely when our kids were asleep, to kind of provide connectedness. I think moms in this time, whether they're new again moms going through COVID-19 and challenged by what our globe is facing, is they need to feel connected and that they're not alone. Because we're isolated in our homes or like gradually getting out of our homes, there's a sense of community that can happen virtually through phone calls. Some of the moms that I've encountered that have said, like, I haven't talked to my family this much in years. Like, we talk and we schedule time to see each other, whether it's virtually. That connectedness is the best way to help. Providing and connecting with culture. I think being able to know who you are and where you are and the strengths of your culture, the strength of who you are can help get you through this pandemic, but in general, motherhood. There are some moms that need to have creative space and creative liberty. So think about the moms in your life. Go ahead, think about them. All right, pause. Which one is the crafty mom? You probably got a few just like DIY everything. Like, oh, I can make that. No, don't buy that. I'll make it. That's probably the mom that needs to have creative space. So help may look like being quiet in a space where they can just be alone. Now that may be challenging right now in the pandemic. You probably going to say that you're going to go pick up someone else's kids. Oh girl, I'll give you a break. You're a new mom. I'll let you have some sleep. That actually might cause more anxiety for that mom because they're going to be like, wait, let me check your temperature. Hold up. Where you going? Who you been with? We're going to do some tracing back your steps so we can see all the places you've been before you try to pick up my kids. That's a little bit more anxiety for them. But what you can do is collaborate with them. If they need a little bit more help with chores, yes, I put it on there. Ask them to bag up all their dirty clothes and you go wash them for them. Tell them to keep it on the porch. I'll come pick them up and I'll take care of them and fold them for you and I'll put them in a bag, put them back on your porch, text you, ring the doorbell and let you know when it's ready. Just being available to do and take the stress off that mom for a little bit can support her mental wellness beyond you could ever imagine. So I know if you are in the chat and you are chatting, I would like to see you say, yes, yes, amen, yes, yes. Support with chores, because I promise you that mom is thinking about a lot of stuff, and that stress, anxiety, or even the worries and fears about getting it all done or how am I going to is probably going to affect how she mothers, affect how she sleeps, affect her overall wellness. How can you lighten the load? How can you support in connecting and providing her the space she needs to be creative? I also wanted to mention counseling because counseling is important. That counseling for a mom can look like a lot. If you are open to leaving your home and going to an office, some providers are offering face-to-face gradually, but there's still telemental health available, and it's all the rave, honey. We are all available through some type of platform like Zoom, like a Google Meet, or some other confidential setting. And most doctors are now doing telemedicine or telemental health now. Text therapy is a thing as well. That counseling and support and just being able to tell somebody how you feel that's not biased, that can give you an objective feedback, objective outlook. It's just so valuable. And so keeping that in mind, if you are employed, employee assistance benefits is now offering that for their employees. If your spouse or partner is employed, you may be a recipient of those benefits too. So keeping that in mind, that moms and new again moms have access to that kind of support. There are providers who are actually certified and trained and specialize in maternal wellness. So I'm one of those providers. I got my training through Postpartum Support International. They have a list of providers. I'm not shouting out myself. I actually wouldn't take any. I'm not taking any clients at this point, just because I'm having mommy summer camp now that they're out of school. Yay, fun times. But there are providers who are still providing services and specialize in maternal wellness. They specialize in trying to conceive, to pregnancy loss, to raising children with special needs, to bonus kids where you're having a blended family. Whatever you're going through, there's a therapist for that, I promise. And we also have to keep in mind that grief doesn't always just look like a loss, like a death. It can be just grieving the normal life and what you used to do, what we used to be able to do. And having a space to be able to talk about that is essential in you being effective as a mother, as a parent, and even as a supporter of that mother. If the case gets a little bit more dire, where mom is having a lot more physical, psychotic, and suicidal symptoms, we need to intervene in a different way. You can call the Georgia Crisis and Access line here in the state of Georgia, and that's 1-800-715-4225 to be able to access a licensed clinician on the phone that can guide you on what to do next for that person. So keeping that in mind, that there are team members that include clinical staff, peer specialists, paraprofessionals, and physicians that can support in getting that mom to the next step and that next level of care if it is causing harm to themselves or potential harm to someone else. Keeping that in mind, that's available. It's 24/7 access to that phone number. All right, I mentioned crisis because crisis is basically, in Chinese terms, it is the symbol of danger and opportunity together. That's what a crisis is. It's dangerous, but it's also an opportunity to grow. It's an opportunity to intervene. It's an opportunity for something beautiful to take place for this family. We've all probably gone through a crisis. 2020 probably has brought out the best and maybe even the worst out of you. Can you imagine being pregnant or delivering during this crisis or pandemic? Can you imagine a mother who can't reach out to her child because of the distance, especially a child that's older, an adult? Like, a crisis can bring out the best as well. It's an opportunity. So kind of keeping that in mind for family support, that following up, keeping connected, and linkage to even family therapy or individual therapy can support a family member. We all can benefit from support groups. And I know therapists that actually offer support groups just like this. I know NAMI Cobb that offers support groups just like this in this platform. It's important and it's imperative that we connect parents, especially our moms, to this type of support. I'm not going to leave our dads out. 1 out of 10 dads or fathers experience some type of postpartum depression. They didn't have to deliver the baby in order to experience that. So we're not discriminating. There is also support for fathers too at Postpartum Support International. I talked a lot, but I promise I could have kept going. I wanted to take a moment to see if there were any questions on the information that I presented just now, or if there's anything else that you need to say. So I am also navigating the screen, so hold tight. I'm going to stop sharing. And there we go. All right, so Peter, I got you. And you and me are on here as panelists. I'm looking at the chat. All right. Yay. All right. So Stephanie is thank you all for participating and joining. Stephanie is a crafty mom. Thanks, Stephanie, for sharing. I appreciate you. I feel you. I'm one of those crafty mamas too. All right. And help with chores is great. Were there any questions for me or any questions regarding other resources? You can type them in the chat or you can raise your hand. All right. So Peter, I don't see any questions. That means I did an amazing job.
That's right. Just as I'd expected.
That's exactly what that means. I'll totally receive that and accept it as that. No, but I don't have anything else. Peter, thanks so much for this opportunity to speak to our NAMI Cobb family about moms, my passion.
Well, it was a great talk. And I want to thank you very much, Tiffany, for an informative presentation on a subject dear to us all. If anyone would like to know more about Tiffany Connors, you can visit our website, which is maternalinsync.com. And I also want to remind everyone that the Connection Support Group will take place this coming Monday, Memorial Day, but the Family Support Group is taking the holiday off. But for either support group, you have to go to the website to get the information. Thank you all very much, and thank you again, Tiffany.
No problem. You all have a good one.